What's good, everybody? This is your neighborhood friendly Ill Brown,
This is your man Trox.
This your girl Candy.
and you are back with us once again with the Beat the Block podcast. How's everybody holding up? Everybody say what up to the people.
Shit, we chilling over here, man. Big chilling.
Quarantine.
Yeah, I'm over this shit.
Oh my God.
But you know what? We're going to stay safe and we're going to get through it together, you guys, man. So today's guest, though, you might have seen her on Sway in the Morning. She's in the winner circle. I think everybody here is in the winner circle. She's worked with Bink, 808 Mafia. We could run that all day, man. VH1, CBS under her belt. Everybody give a warm welcome to Ms.Madli, y'all.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on?
Thank you for having me, guys.
Hey, of course.
Man, with all the circumstances, glad you could be on with us. So, how's everything going on your end of the spectrum right now, especially with the quarantine and everything going on?
Yeah, the main thing is trying to stay sane and optimistic about the future of the music. Because for a quick second there, I had a lot of stuff lined up and the year was looking really good as far as the projects and actually money coming in, which is two separate things sometimes in music. So, and then, when this whole thing happened, it just kind of made me, look at my life in general. And I'm sure everybody's going through the same things. They're like, is this what I'm doing sustainable at all? And all these thoughts that come to you. But at the end of the day, I was able to kind of, get it back together. I reassured with the people I was working with that everything was still going on as far as the projects and stuff. So, work-wise, hanging in there, I did get a little bit of a bug. So I'm not sure if I had the actual corona or if it was something else, but I was sick for about 2 weeks as well. And yeah, it just puts a lot of stuff in perspective, like we can complain about work and we can complain about other stuff, but once your health is on the line, it's a whole different conversation to be had.
It's very frightening, man. But we're all gonna get through this. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Sure.
Yeah. So take us all the way back to your childhood in Estonia, where your journey in music started. Can you tell us the story about how and why your parents got you into music school?
I think my main thing was always composing or just playing on a piano. So when I was a kid, I think at the age of like 5 and 6, my main thing was to come to a piano and play the stuff that I can hear from the radio. So just play by ear. And my parents being in music, more or less, and also my whole, family, I suppose, grandparents on both sides, being in music, I think it was kind of like a natural course of events that they decided to put me in music school as well. I wasn't super excited about it because I didn't really like playing or reading music or like the theory behind it. I was just more interested in just like the creative aspect of it.
Yeah.
So as a kid, I wanted to quit so many times. Like every year, I was like, okay, this is the year I'm just gonna stop. And I studied piano for like 7 years. Finally graduated from music school, and it's great, and I'm grateful now today that I had this experience. But even up until maybe like 15 years ago, I was like, okay, this is just something that I did, and music wasn't on my career path whatsoever. So it was just something extracurricular that I had done in my childhood, so, more or less.
So was this something that your family kind of like put you on to, kind of forced you into, or was it just it was something that naturally came, like you actually loved doing it? Like,
what was funny is that there was a point of time where after music school, I was into singing. I started singing to classical opera singing for about 2-3 years. And there was a point of time where I decided, okay, maybe I should just, go on with singing instead. And then when I presented this to my dad, he was like, I think you should just pick like a real major for college and for life. So they were supporting it as something that would expand my horizons or something that just expands my creativity. But they definitely didn't see it as something that I should be doing for a living, which is like this weird. So I was quite confused after
So
high
so
school,
so
and I'm like, okay, so I just did this to do this, and they're like, yeah. So I actually studied sociology instead, and I was a journalist for a little while for a business newspaper in Estonia, and that was to become my real day job, career, or whatever. But after a few years, I realized that that wasn't something that I wanted to do 9 to 5 all day, every day for the rest of my life. And that kind of made me go back to music and kind of figure out my way of how to, like kind of how I fit in this music or the creation or creative side again. So yeah, and then after college, I came to the States. And in 2007, I finally decided to make music making and beat making my career. And I studied at IAR, Institute of Audio Research in New York. And and yeah, that was like the first conscious step towards the future in music, or at least an attempt to do something in music.
definitely. So take it back to your childhood. You fell in love with hip hop at some point. When was that, and what got you into that?
It was in 97 when my friend got me a Wu-Tang Forever double cassette. And
Classic.
we just had come out of Soviet regime, so we didn't really have foreign music that much, or we did, but it just came with a year lag or 2 year lag. So hip hop, in popularity overall wasn't where it is today. So I remember the hip hop section in a CD store was probably like 30 CDs or 40 CDs, and it's just at like super random selection or collection. But I would still go there and then, save up some money to buy a few. And then my friends put me on to pirating music online. Because Kazaa I think it's from Estonia, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
So
I had no idea.
yeah, so all this downloading, even though it took like sometimes an hour to get a song or whatever. That was actually part of how I got my music, because of, of course, being broke and, a kid still, and not having a lot of stuff available in stores anyway. But yeah, I got into it. And one of the next big things for me was Kanye. Before the College Dropout even came out, I stumbled upon a couple of the tracks, I think one with Consequence and some other collabs that he had. And then I really went in and tried to download everything Kanye had ever produced. Because I just was like, everything he does, everything he touches has an appeal to it. There's no boring, like there's maybe a record that I don't necessarily like, but they all have something to it. So
Right.
that, I think, sparked my interest in production in general. Since I already had the musical background, I was trying to crack the code. I'm like, okay, so what is he doing that every record sound like it has character, that he has something to it? There's always some air candy, or that, little something to it that sets him apart from other producers. So that, again, thanks to Kazaa and other pirating programs, I was able to get into.
You had to get it how you lived. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't knock that. Like I was a LimeWire guy myself. You know what I'm saying? I was on
There you
Napster
go.
when it was elite, when it was bootlegging. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm really curious about, like, you already mentioned like your favorite artists like Kanye West. You were talking about Wu-Tang Clan. Were there any others that you were like gravitating towards?
So for me, as a non-English speaking at the time, especially like, so English is my second language. So at the time, I couldn't get into the lyrics. So naturally, it was mostly just the beats, just the rhythm, just the cadence of a flow against the beat and stuff like that that made it appealing to me. So hands down, I was always looking for the beat first, you know? If something caught my ear and was really something that was appealing to me, that's what I would, that's when I would, you know, that's what I would pump really on my Walkman.
Nice. The good
Oh,
Walkman
Walkman
crazy
days.
times.
days.
Oh yeah. Super crazy times. And the cassette tapes and CD players or whatever, and the initial MP3 players or whatever. But yeah, I couldn't understand any of the lyrics, and even some of the songs that I did understand, like the slang and the background of what hip hop really means and meant, it like there's no way you can understand that from over there. You know, you have you live a whole different life, and even like this is not something that you can translate with a dictionary, you know. Like you can't,
Yeah,
like even if you
of
know the
course.
words, you don't know what they really, what the, you know, the essence of a bar is actually. And you know, so
Right, but you could feel the energy of whatever said artist is rapping with. You know what I'm saying? You could feel
yeah.
the energy of that. You could feel the energy of the production behind it, and
Yeah,
that's
and
why.
I feel like once I studied, and once I came to the States and I started to understand, and as I studied more, you know, the background of hip hop and what the words actually mean, that just made me fall in love with it more. You know, that just
Hmm.
reinforced what I already had, you know, the passion that I already had for the genre. So, you know, and sure, I would never fully be able to understand it. I will forever be a student, but you know, I just can't deny that I like it, and I have a lot of love for hip hop. And you know, when I started making beats or whatever, it was never because of like, oh, let me be this female or this woman making hip hop or whatever. I just did it because I had really so much love for it. And that's really what it was. Like, you know, there's nothing much more to it than just pure passion.
Definitely, definitely. So you're into hip hop. You love hip hop at this point. What made you make your first beat? Like, was it out of like sheer curiosity? Did somebody try and put you on the spot to make a beat as a
Oh,
joke
no,
or
no, no, not at
something?
all.
Like,
It's the beginner's ignorance. So when I was in a studio in Estonia and I was doing background singing, as I mentioned, like I did sing in a lot. Um, I studied it, but I also did like singing competitions and stuff like that at the time, right before I left to the States. And I was singing background to a rapper, and I was listening to the beat. I'm like, this beat is whack, right? And then, of course, you're just like, oh, let me just go home and you know get this program and make a beat that's like 1,000 times better than this. And of course, it just sounds like Casio keyboard preset, you know, because you just don't know. You just, but you have that ignorance. You're like, this is easy, you know. Like, I remember when I listened to Lean Back when that first came out, and I was listening to it, like it's so simple, right? And
yeah,
with your ignorant head, you're like, oh, there's just that one sample, and then there's drums, and like, what's there to it? But then, of course, once you get into it, then you realize, oh shit, like you don't really know anything, and even if you do know, you don't have the ear to put these simple things together for them to sound as good as Scotch Storch did, you know?
yeah.
So that was kind of like just a curiosity of like, oh, let me see if I can make something similar to it, or if I make a better beat than whatever I just performed on. And
Yeah,
from there, it's just the I don't know, competitiveness or curiosity or whatever, and also my passion for composing in general. That's kind of where I realized, okay, this is my niche. Like I don't want to play it on a piano, but I love doing it on a computer. I don't
definitely.
want to do it in front of people, but I love doing it in my bedroom, in my geek mode, you know what I mean? So I just found that all these aspects kind of lined up for me.
Yeah. Definitely. It was like one of those things where it was like, oh, if you want it done right, do it yourself.
Yeah. But it was literally 15 years ago when that happened. So, and I'm still to this day sometimes like, oh, am I doing this right? And super self-critical. But when you begin, for some reason, you have all the confidence in the world. That you
Right.
like,
Absolutely. This is one of those things where it's like, oh, I can do this. This is nothing. This is
totally.
nothing. And then when you open up that Fruity Loops or that machine or that Logic or whatever you had, then it's like, oh,
Yeah,
what did I get myself into? And this is for like the first timers. You know what I'm saying? Like this
yeah.
happens. This has happened to me. I started off on Fruity Loops with an ASR 10. So I tried learning hardware and software, and obviously I stuck with the software because I was too young to understand what the ASR could do. You know what I'm saying? And so I want to say, what made you fall in love with making the music? Not just music in general, but making the music.
Um, I don't know. I just the creative part of composing and putting chords together and looking for different instruments. That kind of background I always had, but I never really utilized. And now all of a sudden, I have these programs and um, all of this technology at my fingertips where I don't have to write down notes because I used to, back when I was in music school, you would have to write sheet music in order to have anything done, and I hated that with passion. So
Right.
that's why I never wrote anything because it was dumb to me. Like, and as a kid too, you're just like, what is this, right? You're looking for an easy way out. And once I realized that I can actually record myself easily you just like press record and your thoughts are down, that just kind of opened a whole new game for me. And I'm like, okay, so I can start recording my creativity in a different way, and express myself in a different way. So I think that's what that was. It was always in me, but I just didn't like the you know the ways that I had to do it to that point until that point.
Definitely. It was like they had these rules set up for you. You know what I'm saying? In the music school, but they were kind of holding you back.
Yeah,
It
and I
was
wasn't
it.
I wasn't a huge fan of classical music either. Like I'm like well versed in it, but I'm not. It's not something that I would rock on my Spotify.
Yeah, of
So
course.
it's just I just had the basic knowledge, but I didn't have passion. If that makes sense.
Right, of course. Like, I mean, when you have these rules in front of you, like, it, they're meant to be broken. The
Yes.
rules are meant to
Yeah.
be broken, and then you found a way to break those said rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
This was
I
it. Yeah.
admire that. I admire that about you because rules, because I don't know, creativity shouldn't have any rules.
Yeah, and
Like,
then I think it applies to choosing the music that you make as well, because I am very much into like mashing up different styles and different genres even, and not just, let's say if I'm making trap, I'm not going to go to my 808 kit. I'll pull up a kit that's something totally different, but then I'm trying to
yeah,
make an 808 pattern. Stuff like that. I'm interested in that, still like childlike curiosity that gets you into some weird discoveries. I'm like, oh shit, this is hot. Not intentionally, but just you know messing around, fucking around with new sounds or whatever. So I feel like until you have that curiosity in you, you can still come up with new stuff, and you can still stay fresh as far as your style goes. And that, because it's just like once making music becomes like this work, or like, oh, I have to make such and such style track, then it just sucks the fun out of it.
definitely.
So in order to keep that going, I'm always trying to challenge myself with, I don't know, mashing up two different genres that are not mashed up yet, or like I said earlier, just picking up a different sound bank, or one day I decide, okay, because Omnisphere is my go-to. for a lot of stuff. But then I'm like, okay, so today I'm not touching Omnisphere. I'm going to make this whole track with sounds from, I don't know, Spire or whatever other, VST. So, I make these things challenges for myself to, I don't know, to be more engaged and interested in this process.
Definitely, definitely. So you fast forward to 2006. You decided to move to New York City. First of all, what sparked that?
Stupidity, looking back. uh Jeez, if I had
Oh
known,
wow.
I'm not sure if I would have did it. It's been very rough because I did it by myself. First of all, again, I think it's the beginners, eagerness and ignorance, thinking that you can, take over the world. Like, yeah, let me go to the school for a year and just grind out 2-3 years, make these beats, and then just become a Grammy winner and get these Billboard hits and stuff. And never did I think that it would take so long to get anywhere. So that was definitely a thing. And I was, again, moving to New York, and my parents aren't like super rich or even mediocre rich at the time. They weren't, for sure. So everything I had to do, everywhere I had to go, I had to find a way to do it. Work 2 jobs or whatever, and I didn't have a plan B. So knowing that you don't really have a parent's couch or basement to move back to, even as a temporary resort, is another set of anxiety that just kind of steers you away from the creative process. And you're just like, okay, so how am I going to make this rent? It's a miracle that I haven't been evicted from any of my places. um and I've been okay, and because it's literally every month has been like, okay, so up until maybe like a year or two ago when things got more stable, but it hasn't been easy. And I'm sure,
Oh,
like, I'm not the only one. It's not like a sob story of somebody's like a first um generation immigrant story. There are a lot of people struggling through life the same and for other reasons, but I had a choice, and that's the thing. Like, and then I don't really necessarily have anybody else to blame for the decisions I've made either. So,
of course, of course.
yeah. Today I'm happy I made those choices, but it hasn't been like I don't know, it hasn't been
Of
like
course.
a fun party all these
It's
years.
it can be a roller coaster, especially when you move to the Big Apple, the New York City.
Yeah.
Do you think you would be where you are at now without that though?
I don't think. And mainly because of my personality. Like, I am like a not a lazy but a comfortable person, right? Like, I never had to study super hard in school because I had fairly good enough of a memory. But I'm sometimes thinking, like, what if I had gone for the full potential of what I can really do in life?
Right.
So I like
I
that
got
living
questions.
in New York and living in the States and being outside my comfort zone has pushed my ass to do stuff to, to really, and also like the battles. It's the same thing. It was just me basically knowing myself enough to know that I have to challenge myself to do something. So I signed up for a battle, and then having that deadline over my head and knowing I'm going to be in front of a bunch of people and I can't look like an ass maybe to
Of course.
and reach further in my creative bag and work harder or whatever. So
This was that I standard battle we were talking about earlier,
yeah,
right?
I've done a few after as well. So yeah, basically just that kind of kept me on my toes for a while. Um, and was one of the ways for me to like motivate myself to get out there, but also just to create the best of my ability at the time.
Of course. Was it one of those? I know. So Jimmy Iovine has. I think it's a scene in that HBO documentary, and it was also used as a skit in Dr. Dre's last album. He said the thing that he did that set himself off was take that fear that was holding him back and then use that fear to as an engine to push him. Do you think that was the moment that you were able to say, all right, I'm going to take this fear and I'm going to let it push me instead of hold me back?
Absolutely, because I think the key in life for me, at least, has been just know yourself enough to know what you need to do in order to get to places. It's mostly what I do in order to even get out the house and then work out, is trick my brain to, like, if I do this, then I get to do that, or watch a motivational, I don't know, a series of Sports Illustrated ladies for 5 minutes in order to get out the house, and like I'm tricking my brain all the time. So this is maybe, maybe this is weird, but like this is basically one of the main ways I can get stuff done around the house, whether it's cleaning or making a beat or working out or whatever. It's just literally that.
Ah, I see. So you're one of those people that like needs some kind of like motivational support.
No, not
Oh, okay.
support from anybody else, but just
Not
for
from.
my own. Just it has to come from inside for me.
Got it.
That's for sure. But yeah, when it comes to fear, or when it comes to that, definitely. Like I'd been sitting on tracks for a while, and I was just scared to put them out. I was scared to really play it to people, and a lot of times the people that surround you before you get into the circles of I Standard or other beat battles, um, you're not always surrounded by music people, and sometimes you play your stuff to a wrong person and they just give you the feedback, and when you just started out, you don't know good feedback from bad feedback, right? You just take
Right.
it for the face value. And unfortunately, for a while, I was surrounded by people who are just like, yeah, or friends, and I took their advice too seriously, and I was afraid to put out what I had, until there was this breaking point. That I'm like, okay, if I'm not going to do a battle, if I'm not going to present my music to the world, then what am I doing? So that's when I signed up and did my first.
That's that's uh that's really like you just have to decide one day that you're gonna do it. Like it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So I want to fast forward to you making compositions for these companies and stuff, and I want to make this clear. There's a difference between composing and producing. Composing is actually creating the notes, writing the music, and then putting it all together. The producer is like the overall general of the song. They hire the people to play certain notes, among other things. It's both of them have really broad umbrellas. How did you end up like getting in these circles with like VH1 and CBS and etc.?
So after IAR, I started working at a studio. I was interning first, then it became a job, then it became. So basically, to this day, I'm still selling pro audio gear. I'm doing this remotely, but I have been in pro audio sales for over 10 years now.
Dope.
But as I was working in the studio, and then when I was still doing it 9 to 5, one of our customers has a production library. So that's something where you just basically collect a bunch of tracks and then you shop them to ABC or whatever broadcasting channels. So as I was working with him on some other stuff, I became more and more interested and familiar with that side of the music industry. So my first attempts, or my first musical, the first tracks basically that were published weren't hip hop, or weren't even uh, weren't hip hop, weren't beats. They were actually compositions for TV. So uh, classical music, jingles, all types of different genres, but hip hop actually. So so yeah, like hip hop to me, since that was my biggest passion, I almost left it the last, because I was more self-conscious about it. And the other kind of like more modern classical, I could just like, okay, I've done this. When I'm in music school, I studied this, so I was more confident making that. So that's how it started.
So, for all of our listeners out there that might be curious to try their hand at this, do you have any tips for them on like how to get in these circles,
For
like how to
licensing,
shop? Yeah, for licensing. Yes.
a couple tips I do have, which I've kind of accumulated over a year. But one of the things, it seems to be like this notion in hip hop and beat makers circles that, oh, like anything that an artist doesn't want, you just throw away for licensing opportunities, and that's not true. And I feel like a lot of people are shooting themselves in the foot with that. And I see this all the time on Facebook and Instagram. They're like, yeah, let me get into this. I have a lot of throwaway tracks, or I have a lot of like beats sitting on my hard drive, and I'm like, meh, because one thing to remember is licensing game is just as competitive as making music for artists. So yeah, your odds are maybe better at placing something on TV, but then the money is not that great. It's more of a numbers game on the licensing side versus on hip hop or artist music or placement game. You would have a bigger chance or shot at something making you hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. So in TV, the odds are less, but then it's almost like scratch off versus Powerball, right? And I think somebody somebody made that analogy, and I think that's a great way to look at it. So your licensing music is a scratch off. Yeah, you got $5-10 every now and then, but it keeps coming, and it comes more frequently versus you placing something on Jay-Z's albums. Like all the spots are already shared, right? Like Swiss is gonna get one, like Pharrell's
Right.
gonna get one, and there's like 2 or 3 spots for guys like us to possibly maybe get a chance. But once you do get it, sure, then the Powerball, you hit it.
Yeah, definitely. I actually learned that the hard way with licensing.
Yeah.
I was thinking I was dealing with this licensing company. Still am actually. I thought I would just throw them like throwaway sample free joints, and then they were like, "Oh, we like these, but can you build on them?"
Yes,
That's what they want.
absolutely.
They want dynamics and stuff like that.
So,
Would you
so,
think?
so
So
the
would you think
thing,
that's important?
yeah. So the thing with that is like, thing to remember is your throwaway or shit track, your like Z-list track is going against somebody else's best work. Somebody
Absolutely.
who wakes up and does licensing music 9 to 5. And to me as well, that was kind of like a wake up call when one of these companies was throwing like a annual composer dinner, and then I went there and I'm like, oh shit, like these people are seriously doing this. This is their day job. Like this is what they do. So yeah, that's one of the tips that I feel like is maybe useful for somebody that wants to get into it. And also your format is slightly different, and like you just mentioned, they want the stuff to change all the time. So when you give an artist a track, you give them like 8-bar loop, then you give them a 8-bar verse, maybe 4-bar chorus, and then go back to the verse. Like for artists, because that's they listen to it and they record to it as is, versus in licensing world, you're giving your music to an actual music supervisor or music editor. That's all they do. They know how to get that 4-bar loop to loop 8 times if they wanted to. So
Right.
you need to give them some changes or some variations that happen every 4 bars. So when they say, okay, licensing music is normally only like a minute and a half to 2 minutes, yeah, but then it has to have so much more happen to it versus a 3-minute artist track.
Definitely. I feel like I've learned something today about that. Thank you, Madly. I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah.
Now we got them
Yo,
gems.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's dope. I remember I did some licensing work for a company called Mio flavored water. You squirt the stuff into your water
Oh
and
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good stuff.
yeah, and I submitted like 20 original compositions, man, and it was crazy. Like the ones I really thought, I was like, oh yeah, they should like these a lot. The one they ended up picking was like, it was the one I did the most instrumentation on, but I wasn't necessarily the most confident in it. And but I literally every 2 bars it was a surprise as far as the
Yeah.
sequencing went, and they were like, "Yeah, this is great. It like matches the energy of the product we're trying to sell. We're gonna go with this one." And I was like, "This is trash, but thanks for the check." You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right. No, it's totally
But
like that. Totally like that. Um, yeah. It's the licensing world is a different place for sure. And it's almost, I feel like, closer to beat battle mode, because then, in your battles you want to also make sure that your tracks evolve throughout the whole minute or minute of a half, however
indeed,
long your format is. And I feel like this is closer to your artist for I mean your licensing format. And then one of the mistakes I did, or I made for a long while after doing battles, I was sending my battle formats to artists and they didn't know what the fuck to do there. They're like,
Right.
so, and in my head I'm like, okay, so they can just loop this part that they like, but then no, that's not how it works. They want the stuff to literally be laid out all the way, like, in the song format. So, a lot of stuff, that I learned, the hard way. You can be the best. You can be a beat battle winner, but then if artist doesn't rock with your stuff, then what are you doing? Like,
that's a fact. That's a
That
fact.
is
So,
true.
with that being said, so you're making beats for so long, right? What was the spark that said, you know what, I'm going to take my work to the big stage? And was there any insecurities or things where you like, man, maybe I don't have the best equipment or best resources? Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I was very timid, and to this day sometimes I am, because when I went to IAR, so first things, I went there when I was 25 and the other kids were like 17. And I was like, fuck, I'm so old. Like, what am I doing? And then when the 17-year-old kids were telling me like, oh yeah, I have 150 beats. And I'm like, fuck, I only have 5. Like, that was to me, I already started with this insecurity and not being from the country and all these other aspects added to it. I was very, very like insecure for a very long time. And I didn't have the right equipment. I was working on a floor for the first year, and all these things. But that's
Right.
struggle for I'm sure everybody's done it for a while. But all these things just make you think that you don't know enough. And again, like I mentioned earlier, being surrounded by people who are not really like the here's the thing, like when you play a track to your mom or somebody that's totally away from music and you ask for their opinion, they're going to say something because you asked, right? But the feedback is not necessarily what you need to hear or what is even constructive in any way for you, for you to take your music to the next level. And I had made a mistake of relying on people's advices that weren't in music, that weren't even artists, that were just there. But since I asked, they replied. So when I'm asking, oh, do you think I should change this snare up or this up? They'll be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But they don't, they barely know what a snare is, or stuff like
Right.
that.
Exactly.
So if you get caught up in that kind of feedback loop from folks, that also can, you really like kind of eat your confidence, or thin out your confidence there. So it's definitely was like a mixture of things that made me hold back for as long as I did before I was brave enough to like step out.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
I remember, let's go back to the I Standard days. I started with them and I was booking the New York market. And I remember when I got your email. First, what made you submit to I Standard to be in a producer battle? Like, what was your mindset at that moment?
I had never seen a beat battle in my life at that point, but it was literally it was all the things that I'd already mentioned, but also I had worked with a guy, right? He was a partner. We were partners producing stuff for TV and film, but also for artists. And at a time, for a couple years, it was fruitful because we were both feeding off of each other and we were both like learning from each other. but it kind of plateaued at one point. And then I realized that there were meetings that we would go to and stuff where he would that people would shake his hand, but they barely notice me. So I felt like, okay, so I'm doing 50% of the work, but I get like zero acknowledgement from anybody. Or, I just got that little subtle shade. And at the time, I didn't really know what it was or why it happened, because I hadn't been in these circles. I just literally kept my head down and just worked. So I didn't know how to take it, but part of me was like, well, I need my recognition for what I do. And then not even from like the being vain or anything like that, but it's like, if I do the work, then please shake my hand or look me in the eye or
Absolutely.
acknowledge that I'm in a room. So that was another aspect that kind of added to all the other things that made me want to do a battle instead of just putting my music out on Spotify. And I had read Wonder Girl's article
Oh
where
yeah.
she was like, okay, this is how I got my break. And I'm like, for a female producer. So I'm like, okay, so number one, that was my first time realizing, okay, female producer is a thing. Because I literally had just had the passion for it. I was just knocking the beats. I didn't care. Nor did I think of it in any type of way. But then I was like, okay, so number one, I realized, okay, it must be harder for me. And adding my previous experience with my partner at the time, I'm like, yeah, it is harder. So all these things combined kind of, I think, made me want to send my submission and just do it.
So I was super excited when I got that email, because in New York there's like tons of producers, everybody submits. So I'm like going through hundreds of emails, and then I came across yours. Listening to all of those beats, and once I saw, I was like, oh, there's another female, because there are few and far between that actually come to showcase their music in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
But I was like, I just wanted to listen to your music, and I'm like, she needs to be in this. But then once I heard it, I'm like, oh, she definitely has to be in this showcase. So big ups to that. I'm glad that, you went ahead and took on that challenge. And I know that, we're both women that make music, and it is super challenging. We both deal with the same aspect. I book sessions with artists, and they come in the studio and walk right past me but go to the men, and I'm like, I'm the one that actually brought you in this room.
Yes. Yeah.
So they don't
Damn.
shake your hand, they don't do anything. I
And
was
it's like,
told,
my bad. That's my favorite. It's like,
right,
my bad. And then they go something like babe or whatever. And you're like, nah.
yeah, and I was told one time, I was like, oh, I thought you was just somebody's girlfriend. Like, I'm
Yep.
like, I
Yeah.
actually am the
Yeah.
one putting up the session. So it's pretty crazy, the things that we've experienced. Given that, like, what is your best advice based on what you've experienced for like other women that are dealing with the same bullshit that we deal with in this industry?
I've gone up and down about this. Like there have been years when I was super mad and super like, yeah, something's gotta change. And then I turned around and I'm like, there's nothing you can really do with rage or with demands and stuff. So I feel like there's no other way than to just be good at what you do and let your work speak for yourself and for itself. And it's easier said than done, because a lot of times you can be dismissed before people even press play, because
That's
they,
true.
this happens so many times when people are like, oh, I thought you were going to be trash. I'm like, based on the fact that I have long hair, or what
Right.
like, based on what? Because like when a guy comes to you and says I'm a producer, they get a little bit more credit, versus when you do it, then it's. But I feel like once you have proven yourself in a way, of course, and you can't prove yourself to the whole world until you're at a certain platform. But once you've proven yourself, I feel like it starts working for you. If you pass this certain tipping point of like you being the female that actually makes good music, that it starts working for you then. And it's sad to say, but it's then once you're on the other side of that hill, you can start taking advantage of it, because you know why not?
Absolutely. It's like that self confidence. Once it kicks in for you to acknowledge it within yourself, then it kind of pushes you over that hump.
Yeah,
But
and then I'm looking at the events, which I've done quite a bit of, like, oh, females in music industry, female producers, female this that, and you go there and you're like, I don't want to be this token of like, oh, this is a female who actually knows, but then
right,
on the other side, you're like, you know, you have to take it. Like, I would be dumb if I turn it down just for that principle alone. Plus, there are other people out there who might be discouraged because they're like, okay, I don't see any role models, I don't see any females doing it successfully. And then you feel like, okay, so somebody's gotta do it in that sense. I'm not, maybe not me, but
we
some
all
of
have to
the females
represent.
need to like step up, and take it for the team. So it's a double-edged sword there.
I agree. So when you did that first showcase, I know that uh, you placed like third, but it was quite a few different producers in that showcase. I think about 20
Yeah, yeah. So
in
very
the New
first
York.
one, Trilogy was second place, I think, and Finestro was first place. And I ended up working with these guys afterwards, and that's when I came back a year later, and I was like, okay, now I know how this shit works, and
That's
that's
super,
that's when I came first.
that's super dope. So how did you feel when you stepped on stage your first time? Like, take me through that moment when you're like, shit, I'm here.
Yeah,
you know.
I was drunk. What can I say? So I was, I had definitely about like 3 or 4 drinks in, and yeah, and at that point you're just like, okay, just
You're
sit
just
there
like,
and
whatever.
I'm dealing with a lot of anxieties, and even like when I did Beast of the Beats, um, that year in 2015, I must say, to even get through this whole battle, 4 days things, I was drunk all this time. And not to take, not like, oh, this is a great advice from Madly, but I'm just letting you know that I was dealing with crazy anxieties, not because of I standard in general, but life and all
Life.
the other things. But so that was really like a rough patch in my life altogether. And so yeah, that was the way I was kind of like able to even have a conversation with somebody, or to get on stage.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
No, I totally understand. I mean, it's a lot of different things that we all go through. People see like, oh, you make beats or you're on stage or whatever, but they forget that, we have actual real life issues, and being a creative is difficult. Trying to earn money, trying to live. You think
Yeah, I
about
I remember I took out a credit card in order to fly out to Atlanta to compete, so which I'm still, I think, to this day paying back. So yeah, it's definitely like a path for people um, who have a strong stomach. Like, it's not for the faint of heart, because any other path you choose, whether it be wanting to be a CEO or whatever, it's hard and it's challenging, but you have a blueprint. You go here, you have this step, you go this step, you graduate from school, then you get an internship, and they're easier to find
that's
than
true.
than getting anything in music industry. And there's a way more structure in any of these paths. So even if it takes you 20 years to become a CEO, you know what your next step is, even who you need to suck up to. But in music industry, it goes like this. Like, 1 minute
Absolutely.
you can be super fast tracked to become on somebody's album, or get a placement with, I don't know, Cardi B or something. Next day it falls apart and you're back at zero, or even below zero, if you took out loans or anything, or gave up other work in order to work for this particular placement. So it's just super difficult and ambiguous, and it's way harder to do this than to do anything else, in my opinion, as far as like structured career path versus
I
creative.
agree. I totally agree. So, what are some of the healthy ways that you've adopted, if any, with dealing with the anxiety aspect, because anxiety seems to be something that we as creators, especially producers, deal with on an extreme high level. And the whole point is to find out some healthy ways that you kind of beat that block of anxiety, or how are you trying to overcome it? Because I know we still have it to this day.
Absolutely. Um, so one of the things that I realized that I was doing is I was being super hard on myself. I was being very critical and very like expecting like shit to line up like super fast, like I mentioned earlier. Oh yes, go to school, and then 2, 3, 4 years later, like land that amazing Billboard hit or whatever. And once you start, mixing and mingling with other producers, you realize, okay, that's actually how it goes. It does take you about 10 plus years in order to get to the point where you thought you were going to get in two, unless you're related to somebody in the industry. And if you're not fortunate enough to either have the money or be related to somebody, then yeah, it's 10 plus year track, and once I realized that, I kind of what I went easier on myself. And I felt like my anxiety levels came down a little bit as well. Knowing that I'm not alone doing this, and then feeling these feelings. And the other thing is, I gave up on listening to all and everybody's advice
Oh yeah,
on
that's
how I should
definitely.
be doing and what I should be moving. But that's hard to say. That's a hard advice to give, because it does take a certain level of like knowing the ropes, like you have to go through it enough times to know, okay, this person's bullshitting. But when you're starting out, you don't know. You're just like, oh my God, oh, thanks so much. And they can be telling you total shit, and you're just like following through and feeling even more anxiety than before.
That's
So yeah, it's good to like every now and then, it has helped me at least to kind of like weed out your group, your inner circle, whose advice you're taking, or whose direction is worth listening to, and who's just like, okay, yeah, good shit, but then you just still do
I'm
you.
recording.
So yeah. But then yeah, I think talking to other people that are going through same things helps a lot, because then you're not crazy, and you're not.
That's true. I think having a community of people, because then you kind of understand, like, oh, everybody's going through the same shit.
Yeah.
Like, trying to climb the ladder. So definitely your circle is everything.
Yeah. And honesty
S
too, because like a lot of people are just fronting. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then them in real life. You're like, what the fuck? Like, what did you just post? That's not what you do. Like not to mention any names, but like I definitely have about 50 people that I know personally, and then I'll see their posts, and it just comes across like a whole different person, because I'm like, I just spoke to you, and that's not what we talked about, or you know what I
yeah,
mean, or so
they put
not
up a
not to
front for the
not to
gram.
fall for the gram flexing or anything like that either, because that happens a lot, and you're just like, you can definitely feel left out or left behind if you take everything
I,
as
t-
100% truth.
I totally agree. So you did one showcase, got third place, and then you won like the next one.
Mm-hmm.
What made you resubmit? Because that's another thing. It's like a lot of people, they go ahead and they join a showcase. You gotta have like some balls, or like really know that you're on to something to go ahead and do it again and then again and again. So like, what made you resubmit to give yourself that next opportunity?
Because I felt confident enough from having that experience. Like I said, I'd never been to a battle. I didn't even know how it worked. So when I saw it the first time and I did it the first time, then I already knew what the battle format was. I know what kind of tracks and what aspects of a song the judges are looking for. And that kind of made me like, and I knew that these tracks, I didn't make them special for the I standard. It was just literally, I went through my catalog, I'm like, okay, what should I play versus knowing now that I'm gonna be doing this again, and I just made some really custom tracks, and then I made sure that I cover everything I sampled. I also made 4 of the tracks were from scratch. You know, all the like I tried to cover different bases, so I knew that I had more in me than what I had just displayed. And if that got me third, that just was like, okay, so maybe I can do a little better. But it's always like, it depends who you go against as well and who your judges are. So it's not really like, you know I'm the shit. No, it's more like, okay, let me challenge myself again to do it. And also, that got me the Sway in the Morning thing, because he was in the audience, and he immediately just was like, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do the cipher? So it's not only about winning or not winning, it's about being in front of the people that matter, and then kind of, rubbing shoulders and starting the network. Because at the end of the day, music, for the most of us who've been doing this over at least 5 years and up, it's the easy part. Like, you can make a track whatever, it's more about like who you sell it to and who wants to buy it, who wants to pay for this shit. So I think that becomes more important after a while than, oh, let me make a better track than I made yesterday. Because you see mediocre people, not mediocre people, okay, that's just very rude, but like people who are not like the greatest, or the songs that are not the greatest, making millions of dollars, and they're like, why am I trying so hard? It's not about
Right.
the actual intricateness of my tracks, more than it's like, am I getting this in front of the right people?
Absolutely. I
Yep.
totally agree. So, winning that showcase got you to Sway. Was there any other major opportunities that resulted in that, like after that showcase?
Everything else that resulted from that was literally one thing that led to another, that led to another, that led to another. Because like, I had this question asked from me before, just recently, and I started to track down, let's say, a Yellow Wolf placement, right? And it was, Yellow Wolf happened because I knew Will. I knew Will because I started making trips to Atlanta. I started making trips to Atlanta because I standard, and because because I won, like, all these things. They're not, there's no straight shot. Let me shake hands with you today, and tomorrow I have a major placement. It's never like that. At least for me, it hasn't been. There's always been this crazy, uh, I don't know, like, couple years later, somebody hits you up. Hey, I remember I saw you in 2015. I literally get these two to this day. And I saw you
Absolutely.
in 15, and I remember you were good. And would you mind doing this? And you're like, oh shit, something that's like totally random, but something you've planted the seeds. You're just now starting to see any sort of results. And then not everything is a jackpot, but can lead to the next step that could be a stepping stone for something else. So it's a super intricate plan of
I agree.
things.
I totally agree. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said everything is really planting the seed for the next opportunity, because you have no idea where your next opportunity is going to come
Yeah.
from.
Of
So
course.
persevering through everything and just getting in front of people, and it's, whoever gravitates towards it, and that's just the way it goes, really.
Yeah, and it goes back to the same thing we just spoke about earlier, is that there's no straight career path. There's no like, oh, this is what I need to do in order to do this. No, you need to do this and take a shot in the dark, a stab in the dark, and then wait if something comes 5 years
Yep.
later. Like, it's just unfortunately how it is.
Definitely. So, Madly, we all know that this journey takes us to an unexpected downturn of some sort. Could you maybe like possibly get into one of them, or was it like maybe like an opportunity that fell through? Was it like an unexpected expense that happened that set you back? Like, is anything that you'd like to elaborate on?
There's been a ton. And not to be like, again, like, it's not like a sob story, because I know anybody who takes this remotely seriously, takes this music career remotely seriously, knows that it just comes with a lot of like financial sacrifices and sacrifices in general, like spending time with your family or even having family. Like this is, it's just a lot, you know. And it also comes with a lot of promises of a better day, or like, I don't know, unicorns and rainbows, and literally 10 to 20 opportunities, out of which maybe one or two actually grow legs. So yeah, I've been close to things that I thought were big things many times. One of the things being part of uh, the Level X group with two other female producers that was endorsed by Missy Elliott. And when we did that, that was supposed to be, you know, not supposed to be, but you still know that when she's involved, it just gives you like a little more hope. And then we made an actual um, album and a project with the ladies, and it all came out good. It just never really took off the way it was supposed to, and some other things happened, and it just a year of of efforts, maybe more from their side, but a year of efforts kind of like was like fizzled out. But you know, also situations with managers or people that are like, yeah, you know, let me, yeah, you know, your catalog is great, let's do this, let's do that, and you just like, ugh, it ends up being nothing. Or it, forming groups with people that are like, yeah, we should do this producer group, or we should do this artist group, or we should do this, make this band or whatever, and it just kind of like falls flat. So there have been a lot of those things. And from financial aspect, yeah, like I'm still paying back the cards that I used to travel around, to go to Atlanta, to go to LA, to go to South by Southwest without having any monetary, you know, thing at the end of the rainbow waiting for me when I got there, just off the hunch, or like just to, you know, talk to the right people and hope something will come out of it one day in the future.
Yeah, you know, another thing we all go through as producers, you know, is you know, the dark side and the downsides of, you know, constantly putting yourself out there, you know, like you said, paying for those flights on a hunch and going to all these events and different you know, showcases and festivals and things like that. Uh, you know, mental health is a big thing for us producers. You know, all of us on the show are producers, and we have our ups and downs. What are some of the things you do, you know, to make sure you're good? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are some of the things that you would recommend, or some of the you know processes you go through to make sure, like, you know, mentally I'm doing good despite all the ups and downs.
Yeah, so in addition to staying away from from the advice people, and or taking it with a grain of salt, and also you know, I guess being better at knowing what opportunity is worth taking upon and which one is not. Also, one of the things I, you know, working out, I, you know, and it's a cliche or whatever, but like this posture is getting really terrible just from sitting and like hovering over the keyboard. And I
Oh man,
noticed
don't we
that,
know it?
yeah, so I noticed that that maybe I would never get my posture back, but at least I get some sort of like endorphins going if I do get up and get out the house, and because you know this quarantine thing is, it's a regular Tuesday for a producer, you know, like if you don't
It's a
have
Absolutely.
if you
lifestyle.
don't have a day job, or if you, even if you do, for the rest of your time, you're still staying in, so there's nothing super different about it. So I had to force myself to get out the house. It was literally one of the things I would put on my calendar to just leave the house, even if it's for the gym or just a walk or something. So, and I came back, and I came back with better ideas. Not maybe even better ideas for tracks, but better ideas for like how to market myself properly, or some collabs, or let me hit up this person. Oh, I haven't talked to this person or that person. Like it, I always came back with some ideas. So even from that aspect, I felt like it was worth while, like not necessarily how many calories I burn, but just to get to a different headspace. Um, and and now I feel like another thing that has given me my sanity back a little bit is thinking more from the business aspect of music, like looking at it as a business, not like, oh man, we should collab. Yeah, we should, but where are we going with this, and maybe become a little harsher with the no's, but only to keep my own, sanity, so to speak, not taking on projects that are just like super stabs again in the dark, or like, oh, once I get put on or once this happens, no, you just say no to things, and then charge more for things that you're gonna hate doing.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
Yeah.
even for, if, like, to this day, I even if somebody still says, okay, can you do this for a couple $100, can you do this for $300, and you're like, will I enjoy this for the $300, or would it be like pulling teeth for $300? So then it's a whole different it's a whole different,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
ball game.
I think
And
all of us have been there. We're gonna tax more if we're gonna hate it. That's for sure.
yeah,
Like, I feel like we should have a sound effect for that on this show. Like, you know what I'm saying? Tax
Don
alert
Juan
or something like
DeMarco.
that. Because
You getting
there's
taxed.
absolutely been projects I've been like,
yeah.
yo, I normally would do this for 500. I'm gonna charge 15 because I absolutely hate this concept or
Yeah, for
idea. You
sure.
know what I mean?
And then
Right.
mixing part,
Absolutely.
I realized, and I just had this conversation with somebody this morning. Like, a lot of times we fool ourselves, not fool ourselves, but like, let's say we want to be a producer, but everybody's like, yeah, you should become an engineer and you should go to the studio and work there. And that's where you work your way up to these artists. And then you can start pitching your music. And then you realize 10 years later, you're still an engineer. Not that there's nothing wrong with it if that's what you wanted to do. But if your main goal is to be a songwriter, or your main goal is to be a producer, and you're still engineering, yeah, you're making money, but you're still away from your dream and you're not touching it, so
Right.
when that's another thing. And then I know that I've taken up engineering quests, like mixing and then that kind of stuff, and I can do it, but that's not my passion. So years ago, I would say yes to all of it. Like, oh, there's money, there's a PayPal that's coming at the end. Okay, sure, let's take it, whatever it is. And now I've learned to, even however enticing this is, if it's not the amount that makes or breaks my budget today, or makes me pay my rent or something, then I'm I'm saying more no's to mixing jobs or engineering gigs, that I would have normally taken.
Absolutely. And yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Wow. It seems like, you know, you've really been on your grind and you know, since coming over to the States, you've adapted a hustler's mentality and really got your business stuff in order. You know what I'm saying? Which is an excellent thing. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, what was that turning point when you actually decided to say, you know what, I'm gonna, set my boundaries and get my business stuff set up the way I want it, and basically, that turning point where you decide to bet on yourself and,
Yeah,
and
there
really
was uh, there
put your
was
brand out there.
there was like, I mean, my turning point, as far as like, I've had a few, right? Like, one of them, sure, was like starting with the battles. Then from the battles, it was moving towards doing artist tracks and putting more into both licensing lanes and artist lanes. But then when it comes to like saying no to stuff, and then putting my mental health first, was, remember, I was working on a mix, and for somebody that um, wasn't paying enough for what it was, but I still wanted to go do a good job, because my mentality has always been like, if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. So I was really
Absolutely.
putting in a lot of work and effort to something, and that was like maybe 4 years ago, for something for $200, and I know the work was worth way more than that. And this guy came back to me with some tips on how to improve this, and this made me so livid. I was like, this motherfucker. And that was the point where I'm like, you know what, like, just who can you really blame? Because you said yes to this thing, and this guy has a right to say something because he feels like he's paying, you know, a fair price to it. And when you say yes to it, you have nothing else to do than, you know, give him his revisions and shut up. And that's when I realized that, okay, so it's up to me to like adjust this. You know, if it kills my heart and soul to do this project for this amount of money, then this is a no, you know, and this is how it has to be.
Absolutely, totally understand that concept. You know, your name is on the line at the end of the day, so it's one of those things like, damn it, I should have charged more, but you know what? It's still, you know, more important that you leave a good taste in everybody's mouth. So it's like, you know what I mean? It doesn't affect my business going forward, but it's definitely a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Speaking of lessons learned, those usually involve crazy stories. I know Ms.Madli has some crazy stories along this journey. Some funny stuff, some crazy stuff. We are all ears here.
It's maybe not as crazy as it was, just really shocking to me when I was in a room full of like all these big producers or whatever, and I think Focus was there and some other folks, and somebody introduced me to the crowd as like, yeah, you know, the next person I would like you to meet is Ms.Madli. I saw her play at LA Expo, which is a battle that I did, and that went really well for me. And the guy was like, yeah, so I saw her in LA, and then she was on stage, and we were all like, I couldn't believe that these sounds were coming from her, and I was waiting for her boyfriend to come out from the back on crutches, because this must be that this dude made these tracks, and it could have been her.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know, like this, like some real
Some real misogynistic demeanor.
shit, and everybody was applauding, and I'm like, what the fuck is
When
going
you're in a
on?
room full of
Right.
men, they
Yeah,
think it's
so
normal. They
they
clap
thought
and
it was
applaud.
they thought it was really like the best compliment that you could ever give to somebody, to say you sound just as good as a man. And I'm like, yeah. So that's one. It was just a
Said
shocking
yeah.
story. It wasn't like maybe super crazy, but yeah, it's just definitely made me. So I was just so dumbfounded for a very long time. Like, didn't even know how to address this.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's so interesting how they just don't get it. Like, you
Yeah.
just don't get it.
And that's the thing, like, you don't want to even villainize men. It's not even that. It's just like, you know, it's unfortunate how the things have been, and that this is the state we're at. And you know, it's just up to you and I and other female producers to you know, step up and do what we do, I suppose. And you know, because most of the people that I work with are men, and I love my collaborators. I love my Kenny Buttons. I love my Nook Beats. I love my guys. Like, these are
Yeah.
my friends, and the people that I, you know, talk to daily and weekly, so that help me get through these times. So it's not about us versus them. It's more so just like the current state of affairs that just like
That's true. That's true.
you're like, wow.
So tell us about this Airbnb experience. I'm curious.
Oh my God, we've had a lot. So when we travel, it's usually myself, Nook Beats, and Lisa and Kenny. So it's the four of us. When we go to any A3C, or when we go to LA or whatever. So it's one combination of the four of us, at least
Right.
two of us at the time. So Nook and I have plenty of Atlanta stories where we just end up in a place that it just smells and it's dodgy, and then we just have to give it up right away. Then one time we had a place, it's me, Lisa, and Nook, and we got a place with this lady who is literally like somebody's like church uncle or aunt. Like, she had a curfew. She's like, well, when you come home, you have to call ahead. The whole house smelled like bleach, and there was no shower. So there was this, there was this Walmart little joint that comes off the faucet, and you just
Oh,
like,
you gotta
and then you
spray
see my
yourself
hair,
down.
like
Oh,
I
hell
can't,
Oh
no.
I mean, I
man.
can, but like it's challenging to
They
say the
had you
least.
with the sink sprayer.
So then we realized halfway through the night, the first night, that there were actually 7 people staying there, not just us and the host, but 7 other people. There was one bathroom with that thing, with that hose thing. And she had timed everybody's bathroom times. So she would come knocking if you're there longer than 10 minutes, but this is also where the toilets were. So it was just like,
Wow.
it was
That's
such a
crazy.
shit show, and the lady was super rude, and she was trying to charge us. She's like, "Well, you can't use the fridge, but there's a breakfast, a continental breakfast served for $5 per person." And it was literally 2 like donuts from, you know, one of those like $1 joints that you can buy from the gas station. So she would serve
Wow.
2 hard donuts with a coffee.
She was
Um,
taxing.
yeah, but then she would block the refrigerator so people would pay her, and it was just like such a shit show. We left that place. We originally booked it for 10, and then we left 2 nights after because there was 0 room in our room. It was just as like, it was a twilight zone. Like, I could not believe that somebody would even rent this place with a straight face.
Right.
And then she started getting at us on Airbnb. Just
For
like,
the
she
refund.
she was telling me, she was like, "Well, if you don't like how things work in this country, you should go back," and stuff like that. Like,
Oh shit.
Wow.
Psycho.
really shitty. And I'm like, wow.
One
I need
star.
her username so I could like
Right. We
go in
all
there
gotta
and
Oh, we
just
could.
just
hop on.
I
Yeah.
think she's still doing business, which is I can't
That's
believe.
insane.
Yeah, her name is
Insane.
good.
Mia, and then she had everybody call her Dr. Mia because
Oh,
she had, but she didn't have an actual degree. It was some bogus, I don't know, some like,
sick lady, huh?
yeah. So, and then yeah, one of these letters where she was cursing at me on Airbnb, she was like, "And it's Dr. Mia to you," and I'm like, "Okay, lady." And it was just
Excuse me?
batshit crazy, and yeah, it's just
What?
one of the stories, but yeah.
Wow.
What?
Dr. Mia. I'm
Dr.
definitely
Mia.
gonna leave her a 1 star.
Right. We gotta find
Yeah.
her and hit her up.
Yeah.
Put that on the
Yeah, we,
chat.
So yeah, but that's just the regular Tuesday again for us,
Right. For
you
a
know.
producer,
Just
for a
like,
creative.
it's like, what else do you have? Like, hit me.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, what else do you have going on? What do you got coming up?
I'm working with a Universal Finland artist, Tinze. She is an actual twerk artist, and she has a school in Finland. She's really big over there. But Universal is now kind of signing people, um, you know, of her caliber, because times are changing. You don't have to be a singer anymore. You don't have to be a rapper. So she
Right.
signed to Universal Finland, and I am making all her tracks for an EP or an album, given how things work, and also make all her music for like social media and stuff. So this is a really interesting project. I'm making trap, to twerk, I don't know, West Coast. This is like a mash of different styles and EDM, and it's really interesting. And I'm kind of pushing my boundaries with this stuff.
So, before we get out of here, tell us where we can find Ms.Madli. What are your socials? What any projects you got out right now? Like, we want to know it all.
I had a track that just came out with Ryan Toby. I don't know if you know him, but he used to be in City High.
Oh,
Oh
yes.
yeah,
okay.
Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ryan put out an album just last Friday. Um, that's on Spotify. That's everywhere. So one of the tracks, "The Way You Come," that's produced by me. So that's what's out. Other than that, I'm on Instagram, Ms.Madli, Ms.Madli. Same handle in Twitter. On Twitter, on Facebook, I don't know what my handle is because somebody stole Ms.Madli for whatever reason. So it's something
Ah.
Ms.Madli. I forget what it is, but yeah, I'm online. I'm always open to DMs, collabs, whatever. So yeah.
No
Super
doubt, no
dope. I'm
doubt.
so
Thanks for
glad to
thank.
have you on the show.
Thank you
I
for
was
having
like, we
me.
gotta
This
get
was fun.
Madly. Absolutely.
Well,
Well,
that's it, man. It's been another intense episode of the
This
Beat the
was
Block
intense.
podcast.
it
This was
was
intense.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to the nitty gritty, man. We asked those questions, everything short of, drug use and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But, but without further ado, that's our time for this week. We will be at you next time. Make sure to tune in to the Beat the Block podcast. I'm your host, Il Brown, along with my beautiful co-host. And tell them your name and stuff.
I'm
Can't.
Trox.
I'm Candy. He said beautiful track. You just went ahead and took my damn
Oh
spot. That's
shit,
all right
my
though.
bad. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, Trox is beautiful too, damn it.
You
We are
beautiful.
beautiful souls.
You beautiful.
We're all beautiful souls here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's been real. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Peace out.
Peace.